On a desolate mountainside in the dead of a Soviet winter, a search party discovered a scene that defied all logic. A tent ripped open from the inside. 9 sets of footprints leading away into the lethal cold left by people who were barefoot or in socks. And a final cryptic conclusion from investigators. The hikers died from an unknown compelling natural force. For decades, the story was buried, a Cold War ghost story. But when the case files were declassified and uploaded to the internet, the Dyatlov Pass incident was reborn as one of the most fiercely debated digital mysteries of all time. Welcome back to Vanishing Threads. Today, we're examining a case that has been analysed by a global jury of online sleuths for years. We'll separate the original, terrifying facts from the decades of online speculation and ask, in a mystery with no survivors, can the collective power of the internet truly find the truth, or does it just create more shadows? The group was led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, an experienced and respected outdoorsman. With him were 8 men and 2 women, all seasoned hikers in their early 20s, bonded by a shared love for adventure and the stark, brutal beauty of the Soviet wilderness. Their journals and photographs from the early days of the trip paint a picture of youthful optimism and camaraderie. They tell jokes, sing songs, and write about the challenges of the trail with a sense of determined pride. One member, Yuri Yudin, the 10th hiker, was forced to turn back early due to severe joint pain. It was a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life, but it also saved him. The remaining 9 pressed on. On February 1st, they began their approach to Mount Ototen, but harsh weather, including a disorienting snowstorm, caused them to veer west toward another peak. Kolat, a name that translates from the local Mansi language to Dead Mountain. Realizing their navigational error, they decided to make camp on the mountain's exposed slope, likely to wait out the storm rather than retreat to the safety of the tree line below. It was a questionable decision for such an experienced group, and one that online investigators have debated for years. But it was their last. From this point on, the narrative is no longer written by the hikers, but pieced together from the silent, terrifying evidence they left behind. When the group failed to send a telegram by their scheduled return date of February 12th, their families grew worried. A search operation was launched, but it wasn't until February 26th that a volunteer search party discovered the abandoned campsite. The scene was not one of a simple accident, it was a tableau of profound strangeness. The large canvas tent, their only protection against the Arctic conditions, was half buried in snow and collapsed. More disturbingly, it had been sliced and ripped open from the inside. A frantic, desperate escape. All of the group's belongings, their warm clothing, their boots, their food, their axes and knives were left behind, neatly arranged. It was as if they had fled in an instant, taking nothing with them. Leading away from the tent, down the slope toward the tree line 1.5 kilometers away, were 9 sets of footprints. Investigators noted that they were made by people who were either barefoot, wearing only socks, or a single boot. The tracks were orderly, suggesting the group had retreated in a calm, organized line, not a panicked scatter. But why would they walk calmly and so ill-equipped into temperatures of -30 degrees Celsius? The footprints led to the edge of a forest, near a giant Siberian cedar tree. Here, the first 2 bodies were found, Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko. They were stripped down to their underwear, lying next to the remains of a small fire. The branches on the cedar tree above them were broken up to a height of 5 meters, suggesting one of them had frantically tried to climb it, perhaps to get a better view of the tent or to escape from something on the ground. Their hands were torn and scraped raw. 3 more bodies were found between the cedar tree and the camp, at intervals suggesting they were trying to return to the tent. These were Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin. They were more fully dressed than the pair by the fire, but still inadequately. The official cause of death for all 5 was hypothermia. Slobodin had a minor skull fracture, but it wasn't considered fatal. At this point, it seemed like a tragic, yet perhaps explainable accident. A panicked evacuation, a failed attempt to survive the cold. but 4 members of the group were still missing. For 2 months, the search continued. Finally, on May 4th, as the thick winter snow began to melt, the last 4 hikers were discovered under 4 meters of snow in a ravine, 75 meters from the cedar tree. And with their discovery, the case file was ripped wide open, transforming from a tragedy into one of the world's most enduring and disturbing mysteries. These 4, Nicola Thibault Brignol, Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Zolotaryov, and Alexander Kolevatov, were dressed more appropriately than the others, some even wearing the clothes of their fallen friends. But they had not died from the cold. They had suffered injuries that the lead investigator compared to the force of a car crash. Thibault Brignol had a major skull fracture. Zolotaryov and Dubinina had numerous crushed ribs. These were not injuries one could get from falling over in the snow. They were the result of an immense crushing force, and yet their bodies showed no external wounds, no soft tissue damage, as if they had been squeezed by an invisible giant. Most unnervingly of all, Lyudmila Dubinina was missing her tongue, her eyes, and part of her lips. The official Soviet investigation was brief and cryptic. It concluded in late May 1959, stating that the hikers had died as a result of an unknown compelling natural force. The files were classified and access to the area was forbidden for years. The story was buried. For decades, it remained a local legend, a ghost story whispered in the Urals. But then, in the 1990s, with the fall of the Soviet Union, the files were declassified. The case documents, the coroner's reports, and most importantly, the hikers' own photographs from their final days were scanned and uploaded to the internet. A cold case from the Cold War was suddenly hot, and a global digital investigation began. Online forums, blogs, and later, entire subreddits like our Dyatlov Pass became virtual incident rooms. Every photograph was magnified, every journal entry translated and analyzed, every piece of evidence debated by a new generation of sleuths. This crowdsourced effort has generated dozens of theories, but a few have risen to the top, each attempting to explain the cascade of bizarre events. The first, and now the official explanation from the Russian government's 2019 reinvestigation, is the slab avalanche theory. This isn't a massive, thundering wall of snow, but a smaller, dense slab that can slide down and strike with incredible force. A 2021 study by Swiss researchers used advanced modeling, even consulting avalanche experts and data from the Disney movie Frozen, to show that a specific combination of factors, a cut made in the slope to set up the tent, a buildup of snow from the storm, and katabatic winds, could have caused a delayed slab avalanche to strike the tent hours after they had fallen asleep. This would explain the internal injuries of the 4 found in the ravine, the panicked escape, and the need to cut their way out of the tent. The others, less injured, succumbed to hypothermia. It's a neat scientific explanation. But for online communities, it leaves too many questions unanswered. Evidence cited against the avalanche theory includes the fact that the location itself showed no obvious signs of having been hit by one. The footprints also appeared too orderly for a panicked escape. And why would experienced hikers camp in an avalanche-prone area to begin with? This leads to the second major category of theories. Military involvement. The 1950s were the height of the Cold War, and the Urals were a hub of Soviet military and industrial activity. One popular theory is that the hikers accidentally wandered into the path of a secret weapons test. The strange orange spheres reported in the sky by another group of hikers about 50 kilometers south of the incident are often cited as evidence. Could it have been a parachute mine test, which detonates mid-air and creates a powerful concussive blast? This could explain the massive internal injuries with no external signs of trauma. Other variations suggest nerve gas, which would explain the panicked flight, or even a test of a radiological weapon. Traces of radiation were reportedly found on some of the hikers' clothing, though it's important to note these levels were considered low and their significance is heavily debated. The military theory provides a powerful antagonist and explains the state's secrecy, making it a compelling narrative for online detectives wary of official stories. Then there are the more exotic scientific theories. The most prominent is infrasound. This theory suggests that a specific wind pattern around the mountain, known as a Kármán vortex street, could have generated extremely low-frequency sound waves. Infrasound is inaudible to the human ear, but at high intensity, it can cause feelings of intense panic, nausea, dread, and shortness of breath. Could a sudden, powerful blast of infrasound have driven the hikers into a state of temporary, irrational madness, causing them to flee their only shelter? It's a fascinating idea, but it doesn't fully account for the devastating physical injuries of the final four. Finally, no mystery of this magnitude would be complete without a paranormal explanation. The name of the mountain, Dead Mountain, is itself a hook for supernatural stories. The local Mansi people have legends of the Menk, a Siberian version of the Yeti, a large ape-like creature. Could the hikers have stumbled upon something unknown to science? This theory, while lacking any concrete evidence, holds a powerful grip on the imagination. It speaks to the primal fear of the unknown that the case evokes. The missing tongue of Lyudmila Dubinina is often pointed to as evidence of a predator, though forensic experts argue it was likely the result of natural decomposition and scavenging in a wet environment, as the bodies lay in a running stream. What the Dyatlov Pass incident shows us is the power of a crowdsourced investigation. The internet didn't just preserve the mystery, it expanded it. It became a living archive where every piece of data was cross-referenced and every hypothesis was tested by a global jury. But it also became a breeding ground for misinformation, where speculation could harden into fact and a compelling story could overshadow verifiable evidence. The avalanche theory may be the official story, but it has not satisfied the digital detectives who have spent years with this case. For them, the narrative remains broken. The Dyatlov Pass incident now exists in two realities. There is the historical event, a tragic accident that took the lives of 9 young people on a frozen mountainside. And there is the digital legend, a vast collaborative thought experiment, a puzzle with 1,000 missing pieces. The question is no longer just what happened to the hikers, it's why can't we let this story go? Perhaps it's because the incident is a perfect storm of narrative elements, a lost expedition, a remote wilderness, a powerful and secretive state, and just enough strange evidence to make any theory feel possible. It's a reminder that we are drawn to the spaces where the map ends. In an age of information, the Dyatlov Pass is a rare blank spot, a digital campfire around which we can gather to share stories and confront the unsettling idea that some questions may never be answered. The files may be closed, but the online investigation will continue, forever searching for a truth that may have been lost to the snows of Dead Mountain. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, stay curious, stay safe.